On the Blue Wire Pod Network. We have some Falcons stuff to talk about, Garrett. So 2 preseason games in the books. Deion Jones back in the fold and getting rave reviews from Arthur Smith, being a competitor and having a good attitude coming back in because he's running with like the third team this week, and he's going to have to kind of fight to earn his spot back, and no guarantees that he's a starter. People wonder if he's going to get cut, but we'll get to Deion in a second. In terms of what you saw against the Jets on Monday Night Football and their second and third string, what stood out to you from the Jets game?
I mean, look, starting with the quarterback position, that's where all eyes and ears go to first, because I mean, the quarterback is the lifeblood of this football team. I was impressed with both guys. And it's more of the same, you know. Marcus Mariota on that first drive, he looked like he had exactly like he did against the Lions. I mean, strong poise, made some good plays, can scramble, can do things with his feet. But most importantly, he did what he needed to do with his arm this week. He had that beautiful pass to Kyle Pitts, who is going to be a problem this year in 2022. He is going to be a problem. I'm really excited to see what he can do this year. But, I mean, we already knew Kyle Pitts was a stud. But the quarterbacks looked good. I mean, the rookie, I mean, he looked as good as you can against second, third string guys. But he showed some poise. I wasn't very impressed with the penalties late in drives that kind of screwed him over. I mean, but ultimately, there's only so much you can take. I just really want to see what the quarterbacks look like. And I mean, ultimately, they looked good. I wasn't completely enamored with them necessarily, but they looked very good. I'm fine with it. But all in all, only so much you can take.
There was, I mean, obviously the Pitts play is what people are citing, the 50-yard play, where it's just Kyle Pitts is just going to be an absolute menace. But one of the things that might alleviate, or what might not alleviate, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of the word off the top of my head. That might prevent. It's a synonym of prevent, so we'll go with that. From Pitts kind of breaking out, especially in the touchdown front, is those underthrows. Like the Mariota throw was behind him. Like it was just one of those things where you're like, Mariota hasn't exactly lit the preseason on fire. Like he's fine. But when you watch the snaps, Ridder, I mean, he had some really good tight window throws when he was in this Monday night. And you look at it, the arm strength's just different. Ridder has just more touch, better arm strength. He's a lot bigger. Like that's the other thing. When you look at them both in the pocket and you look at this, you're like, I'm not sure about this offensive line. And we can get into where the offensive line rankings came in this week for the Falcons, 31, and which is quite bad. And that's a problem if you're Marcus Mariota or Desmond Ridder and you're walking in that front. But what did you take away from Ridder on that front? And Mariota, is that a concern where you're like, okay, we're going to see Ridder sooner rather than later, because it's just, you got to get these guys like Kyle Pitts involved, and you can't be behind. You got to hit these dudes in stride.
You mean specifically with the arm strength?
Yeah, just kind of like, just arm strength, just leading. It's just one of those where it was kind of a duck. Mariota's been fine, but the downfield stuff's not there.
I mean, that was an issue. That's been an issue with Marcus Mariota for much of his career, is the fact that he hasn't really been a guy with arm strength. He's an athletic quarterback who can get out into space and make plays with his legs, and he's accurate. And the big 40, 50-yard passes aren't necessarily his bread and butter. I mean, like, we're not talking about Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes here, you know? Like, this isn't a guy who's going to wheel back or like pull back and just like throw it down the field like that. But we also don't really need him to do that necessarily. I mean, he just needs to make the right reads and make the good throw, which, I mean, ultimately he did that. So I can't necessarily fault him for it per se, but I mean, I think he's adequate. He's not, obviously, I don't think he's the long-term answer for the Atlanta Falcons at quarterback, but I hope I'm wrong. Hopefully they have that guy here already. And I lean more towards Desmond Ridder. I mean, he's a guy who I expect to take over the starting job at some point. And you cited the arm strength. I think that's a fine reason, but it's just reps. I mean, he just need more. As soon as he gets more reps and we see him more and more, I think he's going to continue to impress this coaching staff. And I'm impressed by him so far. He made some beautiful throws. Like you talked about some of these touch throws that he made where he was putting the ball on the money and the timing and the precision was perfect.
Was it
You
Ritter or
don't see that
Mariota
out
who
of
had the
rookies.
eliminated Zacchaeus touchdown in the end zone, back in the end zone?
That would have been that would have been Mariota. That was
Okay.
Mariota.
That was a really good
Yeah.
throw. That was
That
a
was a
really good
beautiful
one.
throw. No, both guys made great throws. I mean, that's the thing. If I don't see a lot of difference between these guys, then I'd like to see Desmond Ritter, but I have seen enough to make Marcus Mariota the starter. I fully expect him to lead this team in September. Whether he makes it to October, that's a completely different question.
Well, but big part of this too is that like we may not even have it like where it's like a who would you rather, because Sharp Football Analysis, which is a great website, Warren Sharp's NFL site, has their offensive rankings across the board, and the offensive rankings for the offensive line, the Atlanta Falcons come in at number 31, which if that's the case, we have some problems. Like if that's the case, then I mean, and you're seeing that a little bit. Like the run game hasn't been great through 2 weeks, and you're kind of wondering like Tyler Algier doesn't really look like he's going to be a big factor early on. Quadri Allison had a nice week 1, but I don't know. Like they're holding obviously they're holding Cordell Patterson off a little bit, and they're just protecting him to save reps and everything else. And that's what you do for a VFL and just a really good player as a whole in Atlanta. But I don't know. I am concerned on that front where it's like whatever progress we're looking for and whatever we're thinking, it's like, do we really want to throw Dez out there behind the 31st offensive line in football? I don't know. I mean, he's a mobile quarterback, which is nice, and he can make plays in the run, but that's scary.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised that they're ranked 31st in offensive line play. They only have 2 really solid positions on the entire line. I mean, Caleb McGarry's looks a little bit better per reports. I haven't seen anything glaring from him to think otherwise necessarily. But Jalen Mayfield hasn't shown any progression at all, which is disheartening. I don't even want to talk about the center position. Like it's not pretty. It's not pretty. I think they're better than 31st, but I'm not going to argue too hard with the ranking. I mean, they didn't show it last year, and to this point, I mean, they had some bad penalties. The pre-snap penalties from these guys have been consistently bad, and they were bad last year, and they cost the team touchdowns just last week, or I guess on Sunday. And I'm just not seeing the progression yet. But obviously, it's not week 1. We haven't seen the full team play a full game yet, so I don't want to overreact too much. I still think that Jalen Mayfield can make a leap. At least be a little bit better. I'm not going to bank my head coaching job if I'm Arthur Smith on it necessarily. But that's why you bring in guys like Schaefer and what's the other
Elijah Wilkinson?
Yeah. So you bring in Elijah Wilkinson, guys like that who could potentially come in and replace him if need be, because the only reason he wasn't replaced last year is just out of sheer necessity. And I don't think Arthur Smith was going to be in that position this year. So if it comes down to it, I'd like to see him make that progression at left guard, but I haven't seen it so far. So stick someone else in. Elijah Wilkinson's he was the penciled starter. So it wouldn't surprise me to see him take the job completely.
We'll see. But we'll see. And another thing we will not have to see is Auden Tate is no longer on this roster. So Brian Edwards survives. Kadarrell Hodge coming onto the scene was a big part of it. I think Anthony Ferkser is going to be a guy for this group. I think he's going to get targets.
It speaks to exactly what Arthur Smith has been saying all along. He says the best guys are going to play.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter where we brought you in, who, like how many, like you go back to college. I mean, like how many stars you have when you were recruited or whatever. Like just because you were drafted, just because you were signed out of free agency, that don't mean anything. Jared Bernhardt was playing lacrosse like a month ago or however long ago or whatever. And he comes in and it looks like he's got a spot on this roster. He's played very well through 2 preseason games. And Arthur Smith's like, all right, fine. If you're going to play well, I'm going to play you. So it just speaks to what Arthur Smith is going to continue to do. He's shown it time and time again.
Yeah, and we'll see. And then Deion Jones, he might not start. Like he's back. Good attitude.
I still think he's trade bait, man. He's
well, I don't even know how much trade bait he'll be if he's not even playing. He's not in the rotation. Like, it's one of those.
Well, he's third string. I mean, like you have some form of chemistry working with that defense already. So he's getting a couple of reps, and not with the starters. He just came off the PUP list 3 days ago. So I'm going to give him a little bit more time. I don't expect him to play against the Jags tomorrow, but look, I would have also liked to have seen this Jags game happen next week, not Saturday, like 6 days between games. It's a preseason game, for God's sake. Give these guys some time to rest and get these players ready to go. So the health of the players is far more important. So give them a little bit more time, first and foremost. But I mean, I don't expect to see him much tomorrow, but I also am not fully convinced he's going to be on this roster. If they can get anything for him, they'll trade him. I would be very surprised if he's playing football in a Falcons jersey in week 1.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. In terms of the Braves, so suddenly there is some question marks in the outfield. This is something that I think is interesting.